Hello everyone and welcome to Rambling Through History. My name is Jacob and today we're going to be talking about the one-eyed Rambo. And this is an amazing story of Leo Major, a French-Canadian soldier that was able to do incredible things against incredible odds. And not only that, he did it multiple times. So if you guys do enjoy this video, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if you have any other amazing stories from people who are not really known, please leave it down below. Anyways, let's go on with the video. Leo Major was born to French-Canadian parents, while his father was working for the American Railroad Company in the US, but moved with his family back to Montreal when he was very young. Major enlisted in the Canadian Army when he was only 19 years old and was sent overseas in 1941. He was amongst the Canadian forces that landed on the beaches in the Normandy invasion on June 6, 1944, and that same day he was instrumental in capturing a German half-track. A couple days later, he was injured by a phosphorus grenade while fighting a group of German SS soldiers, and he lost partial vision in his left eye. But even with this, he refused to be evacuated back to England because he needed only his right eye to sight a rifle. After being partially blinded, Leo Major continued fighting through France and into the Netherlands. There, he took part in the Battle of Scheldt in October and November of 1944. The battle was part of a larger operation to clear German defenders from the coastal areas of the Netherlands so that supplies could be brought in for Allied troops via ship. The Canadian First Army, Major among them, was given the task of eliminating German resistance around Scheldt, a long river running through the country. The going was slow in face of muddy terrain, often cut by canals and entrenched defenders. Immediately, Allied casualties began to mount. One night during the offensive, Major was dispatched to recover some troops who had gotten lost on patrol, but facing a German position in the dark, Major suddenly had an idea that could either be called incredibly reckless or suicidally brave. Taking his weapon with him, Major slid quietly into the canal surrounding the German position and began to swim. He, quote, said, "I was just like a water rat." Major traveled through the water and into the heart of the German position. Climbing out of the canal, he killed 2 sentries also without attracting any attention, but we don't know how he did that. Before stalking through the German position and toward their commander's headquarters, he found the commander inside, sound asleep. The German commander had fallen asleep deep behind a strong defensive position. When he woke up, a Canadian soldier was standing in his room telling him that he was now a POW, and the commander had never heard a single shot fired. Needless to say, he must have been fairly confused. Major pulled the man out of his headquarters and marched him to the barracks nearby where 93 German soldiers were also asleep. With their commander captured, the soldiers were quickly surrendered. Major then radioed back to his unit to report that he had been returning with a few prisoners and asked if they would send some tank support to help everyone in line. His superiors tried to award him the Distinguished Conduct Medal, but he refused, claiming the British General Bernard Montgomery, who would have given him the award, was quote-unquote incompetent. Of course, Leo Major was also resourceful, independent, and above all, tough, which he would prove yet again shortly after the Battle of the Scheldt in February 1945. Major was riding in a truck in German Rhineland when it hit a landmine. The mine exploded and Major was launched into the air, coming down hard on his back and fracturing several vertebrae. Once again, he refused to be taken off active duty. Instead of accepting orders to stay away from the front, he fled and stayed with a civilian family in the Netherlands he had met previously before slipping back in with his unit now a month later. And of course, we don't know how he avoided punishment. Thus, the man with one working eye then spent the rest of the war also fighting with a bad back, which makes what happens next an even more incredible act. In April 1945, as Canadians advanced north into the Netherlands, they came upon the German-occupied city of Zwolle. Leo Major and another soldier who was his friend were sent to the outskirts of the city. Shortly after dark on April 13th, as a part of a reconnaissance mission, the two ran into a pair of German soldiers who opened fire on them. Major's friend was hit and mortally wounded. An enraged Major then returned fire, killing the Germans, but it was much too late to save his friend's life. After that, I had one fixed idea, Leo Major later wrote. It was to liberate Zwolle no matter what I was going to meet in the streets. He first found a German officer and, gun in hand, convinced him that a major Canadian force was coming to obliterate them. Major then released the officer so that the man would encourage his comrades to evacuate and warn them that an attack was imminent. Major then spent the rest of the night simulating that massive attack on the city all on his own. He ran from position to position, firing at groups of German defenders and throwing grenades. When each pocket of German troops figured they must be under attack from a huge force of Canadians, Major showed up to take them prisoner, 8 or 10 at a time, and turned them over to Dutch resistance members. By morning, he had captured more than 50 men and forced the rest to retreat. Canadian troops soon entered the city with no opposition. Major had liberated Zwolle's 50,000 people by himself. Upon the end of the war in Europe, mere weeks after he'd liberated Zwolle, Leo Major returned to Canada. But war wasn't done with him. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, Major volunteered to fight once again. The next year, he found himself fighting the Chinese and retaking an important position on Hill 355, a battleground some 20 miles north of Seoul that was of strategic importance for supply routes. In late November, Major and about 20 comrades snuck into the Chinese camp and began firing. The Chinese assumed they'd been overrun and retreated. For 3 days, Major and his men held the position against Chinese counterattacks made by forces that far outnumbered theirs. At one point, the situation grew so dire that Major's superiors ordered him to retreat, but, true to form, he refused. Major and his men held out, won the day, and survived to return home again. Although he'd once again made it home in one piece, he spent the rest of his life suffering from health problems due to his numerous injuries and lived off his pension. He spent his days quietly living in relative obscurity in his own country. However, he is still remembered in Zwolle, where there is now a street named after him. According to people who knew him, the lack of recognition in his own country suited him well. Major wasn't the type to crave attention. He didn't even tell anyone about Zwolle until 1969, when some residents of the city tracked him down and asked him to take part in a ceremony commemorating its liberation from the Nazis. Though he would talk about the war if people asked, he was always humble about his achievements, right up until his death at age 87 in 2008. He was, quote, said, "I fought the war with only one eye," he said, "and I did pretty good." And with that will be the end of the episode. Thank you guys so much for coming and enjoying this video. Like I said in the beginning of the video, if you have any other heroes that you would like to recognize that are not talked about very much, please leave it down below and I would love to cover them. If you guys did enjoy, please like and subscribe, and I'd also like to thank my friend for telling me about this amazing story who lives in Canada. Once again, thank you guys so much and have a wonderful day.